Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our online tasting with Guerrieri Rizzardi. I'm joined this evening by Giuseppe Rizzardi, and we're going to be talking through the wines of the Veneto. And we couldn't resist a Venetian tasting on the week before Valentine's. So welcome, everyone. Before we start, I'm just going to go through some house rules. I know those of you that join us frequently know these, but if you can just bear with me. All participants will be muted during the tasting, except myself and Giuseppe. We would encourage questions, however, and you can use the chat function, the bottom middle of your screen. We will answer as many questions as humanly possible, and don't panic if the screen rolls up, because we've got a separate question feed coming in to remind us what the questions have been. There'll also be a bottle of Prosecco as a prize for the best question during the first two wines. We'll take a break after the first two wines. And as I say, there'll be a bottle of Prosecco as a prize, the best question during the Prosecco tasting and the Pinot Grigio tasting. This is a virtual tasting, it's being recorded, but only Giuseppe and myself are being recorded, so you don't need to worry. You can leave your video on if you so desire, you won't be recorded. Please remember to eat and drink enough water during the tasting to get the best experience. And hopefully you might have tried some of the food matches that we had in the brochure, which came directly from Giuseppe. If you missed the tasting, or your friends missed the tasting this evening, or you'd like to watch again or retaste the wines over the weekend, we'll be sending an email out tomorrow and with a recording of the tasting. So thank you very much, everyone, again for joining. Thank you, Giuseppe, for joining us from Verona, or from Bardolino this evening. Is it, Giuseppe, you are?
Yes, I'm Bardolino. Good evening, everyone. Buonasera, Irlanda.
Buonasera, Irlanda, lovely. Already it sounds like a romantic tasting in Italian. So Giuseppe, the first thing to say is you're very, very welcome. I think probably a lot of our customers that have joined online this evening have probably met you anyway, either at wine dinners or tastings or at our wine festival over the years, because pre-COVID you used to come to Ireland a lot. But in fact, your mother, the Contessa, actually went to school in Waterford, is that right?
Yes, exactly. So the link and the connection with Ireland is very old in our family, and has been through the generations.
And she does she have fond memories of Waterford at school there?
Yeah, I think she has really nice memories from Ireland, and that's one part of her heart is always there. And she now is not traveling anymore, but before she was always very keen and with good memories, and also some friends that she still has based in Ireland. So long story.
Oh, that's nice. And then in fact, Daniel Stewart, who used to work in our shops in O'Brien's and then worked with me in the wine department, is actually working for you as an export director in Italy, and he's based in Bardolino now. So another Irish connection, quite strong.
Exactly. Yes. He has been here for now a couple of years, I think. And yes, we're very pleased. I mean, his Italian is still so-so, but probably he gets spoiled because everyone tends to speak English with him in the company. But well, that's the daughters are speaking really fluent Italian as well. So it's very well integrated, I think. Enjoys a lot to be here.
His excuse is that everybody wants to speak English to him, so that's why he can't learn Italian so quickly. Exactly. But the girls are fluent, as you say. They've got fantastic Italian.
Yes.
Anyway, so I mean, such a historic estate, such a historic group of estates, Giuseppe. When can your family trace the history back in the Veneto? How far back?
Well, we go very far, because we go back to 1649, when the Rizzardi family bought the land in Valpolicella, and at the time they were traders in Verona, which is the city just 12 kilometers south of Valpolicella, and they bought some land, and at the time was really to have a countryside house, and the valley, which is as I said, 15-20 minutes drive from Verona, was very green, and at the time the economy was based on multi-agricultural, because we had cherries olive trees, grapes, of course, and then the stone, the marble from the Marmo Rosso di Verona. It's also an historical product of the valley. And then they started at the time with different type of activity in agriculture. And I think that it's just through the 19th century that the wine became more and more the most important agricultural activity in the area.
Okay. And let's open the Prosecco, shall we? And you can maybe explain to us about the different estates that the family
Yes.
own.
Yes. Well, starting with the Prosecco, which is the more eastern wine area where we produce wine. We are here in the region of Treviso, which is a small city just northwest of Venice. It's a very hilly area, and that's really the heart of Prosecco. And then we are based and we live in the region of Verona, which is around 2 hours west from the Prosecco area. And I have here a small map of the area that you can see the Lake Garda, and the red dots is where we have the estates, which are all around Verona and on the hills. So basically, Verona is a city that is surrounded by a crown of wine areas. More south is Custozza, then southwest is Lugana, then on the eastern part of Lake Garda is the Valentine area, then moving east is the Valpolicella area, and then the Soave area.
Okay.
And that's the most productive province in Italy for wine, the area of Verona.
Okay, with such a huge variety of styles as well.
Yes,
and there's
definitely.
So many different individual wine styles, which I think makes the area absolutely fascinating.
Yes, and makes us to work a lot, because really with so many grape varieties maturing at different time, different winemaking, it's really a big task. But that's always has been like this. That our wines are the one in the most important wines in the region of Verona are blend of different grape varieties. Of course, here this evening we have 2 varietals, but historically, I mean, everything is a blend, and therefore, I mean, we use to cultivate many grape varieties. Okay,
so let's start with Prosecco then, and you can talk us through the Prosecco.
Yes, the Prosecco, it's a wine that it's named from a village that is very close to Trieste. So the wine region of Prosecco is really very wide, very big, because it goes from Trieste to Vicenza. But the more traditional wine area, it's around the city of Treviso, the villages of Valdobbiadene and Conegliano. And this is, as I mentioned before, this is a varietal wine because it's produced only with the Glera grape variety. And the wine that we are tasting, it's a non-vintage, and it's an extra dry, which means that it's not too dry, not too sweet. Usually it goes up to 17 grams of residual sugar to be named extra dry. And the first characteristic that it's very evident in Prosecco is that there is this fruity, this flowers, white fruit, very delicate character already in the nose, and that's really typical of the Glera grape variety. And I was reading before how you were very well organized in the tasting, and I have all the wines that are a little bit warmer, and it's interesting because, of course, the aromatic comes out. So probably if you started with the suggested temperature, while we're going to go through the tasting, you see how the wine will develop, especially the Prosecco and the Pinot Grigio, because with the temperature they will become more complex. And yes, it's a wine that can last up to probably 2 or 3 years. So it's produced around Treviso and more specifically in the area close to Conegliano.
And Giuseppe, this isn't, I mean, we talked about the residual sugar, but this is on the drier end of the Prosecco scale, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, some Proseccos would be much, much sweeter than this.
Yes, absolutely, yes, because you can have Prosecco that are all the way up to 32 grams residual sugar, which means the double of this, and this would be the category dry. And I think that like often in wines, when the sugar is very high, sometimes is to mask maybe the lack of something else, so that the sugar plays an important role. But I would say that this one is it's quite typical at this level of sugar. It's good balance between the fruits and
I think it makes it. We suggested, or you suggested, you sent over food matches for us, which was mozzarella, or fresh mozzarella or fresh ricotta.
Yes.
And I think that's the nice thing about your style of Prosecco, is that it does match food very nicely. Some sweeter Proseccos, it's quite difficult to match with food, but I think this is actually delicious with savory food because it isn't too sweet, you know?
Yes, I think it's very easy to combine with different types of food. And then, of course, the Prosecco is also, this type of Prosecco is a very good base for cocktails or for, aperitifs. And there we can open an entire subject, because there are so many drinks, from Aperol Spritz to Hugo, but the more classical and traditional, if you can say cocktail, but drinks made with Prosecco is the Bellini, made with the peach puree. But of course, the Prosecco can be mixed with a puree of almost any type of fruit, and will still add something to this cocktail. So it's a very versatile wine.
Willie is saying that he loves Lake Garda and especially Bardolino, and they visit every year on holiday. And to be honest, it is a beautiful, beautiful area, isn't it? The village and just loads of gorgeous restaurants, and it is a beautiful area to visit.
Yeah, it's a very nice area. I was just today, I was on the lake. Now it's really empty, but still you have very nice colors and very nice days when the weather is nice. But really the season starts from April until probably the end of October. And the summer is very, very warm, very packed, and very, we could say, very German speaking. And so it's really a big tourist city. But in the spring and the autumn, you can really enjoy it the most, because still the temperature is very pleasant. There are plenty of excursion to do, hikes, mountain biking, cycling, and then of course sailing or going with the boat on the lake. So it's really a very nice area to travel to.
And also, of course, you can visit your wineries.
Yes, the wineries, of course. Yes.
So Willie, if the next time, if you've not visited Rizzardi's wineries when you're in Lake Garda this year, let us know, and we'll send you the links and so on, because you can definitely visit the wineries, and they've got beautiful tasting rooms, and you can buy the wines, and just really lovely to visit the wineries if you're heading out this year, Willie. Someone else is saying, Bridget is saying that the Prosecco's gone down well with mussels, which actually sounds really nice, actually. I'm not sure what the sauce is, if they're marinara or whatever, but yeah, I think mussels in Prosecco, that does sound nice.
Yes, probably, and especially if the mussels are, I imagine, from Ireland, where you have a cold water, so they're probably more delicate, because the mussels from the Atlantic compared to the one Mediterranean, they're really different. And I think that in general the shellfish from the Atlantic is more delicate, and probably goes better with the Prosecco. In our region, we don't really match it much with seafood, but because the seafood is coming from the Adriatic mostly, and it's more salty, and then it's not really a match with Prosecco.
So Bridget is saying it is a marinara sauce, and she's saying it's Bella Bella with mule marinara, so that sounds nice. I can't remember what mussels are in Italian. What's the name in Italian for mussels?
Cozze.
Ah,
Cozze is Cozze.
Ah, okay. Willie has visited the winery twice, so there you go. He's already visited the winery twice, so that's good. He's on it. He's on the case.
Ah, okay. That's good to hear, because I know that from Ireland, I mean, okay, in the last 2 years changed a little bit, but before there were some flights also to Verona in the summer, so it's well connected. And then Bergamo is a big airport close by, and then the next airport is Venice, so it's very well linked by train and by car. The main airports are not that far.
It's well connected, certainly. So, Giuseppe, I'm just going to remind people that there's a bottle of Prosecco prize for the best question over the Prosecco and Pinot Grigio tasting. And we've just had a question that's come in. Is the production of the Prosecco similar to that of the traditional champagne process? Absolutely delicious and not in your face. So is this method traditional, Giuseppe, or is it made by another method? Dermot is asking.
This is not made with the method champenois. It's made with the method Charmat, and to be very synthetic or simple, it's gas that is an addition of CO2 in the tank, and so the process is not done the fermentation in the bottle, and probably one of the advantages of this method, the method Charmat, is that the wine is ready really few months, if not few weeks. Has been always made with this method, and I think there must be a link also with the characteristic of the grape variety, that it's more suited to this technique.
Because it really that method protects the aromas, doesn't it? That lovely fresh floral aroma with Prosecco, which is classic for Prosecco. That production method really, the temperature of the fermentation and that method protects the aromas.
Yes, and I think also because compared to some other wine areas, Prosecco is relatively warm, so the acidity is not that high naturally, you know, compared, for example, to Champagne. It's completely different climate, also the soil, so they have different grapes that probably they deserve a longer winemaking process, and they don't lose acidity, they don't lose aromatics, while the Glera is a little bit more delicate, so the process needs to be done quite quickly.
So I'm going to, Gary has asked why we're both drinking Prosecco from wine glasses and not flutes. So I'll let you go first, Giuseppe. Okay. Why are you?
Well, I didn't have it's a good question, but I at the winery, when I do a tasting, we always have one type of glass for all types of wines. But of course, if I would be at home with friends and having a glass before dinner, at home I use a type of flute, so sparkling wine glass, and so it's really depending on a meal or at home privately, and this is what I have. And also because having the same glasses for all the wines helps out a little bit to compare, and you know, the same quantity of wine in the same glass. It's for a tasting point of view, it's more easy.
Yeah, I mean, I use a wine glass, and it's sort of it's a kind of not exactly a flute. It's more a wine glass, more like a Riesling glass, I suppose. And it's just because I think it helps protect the aroma profile better than a flute straight up and down. Hard to nose the wine, and I'm also quite encouraging wine with food rather than just as a celebration drink. So I think it's nice to think of it as an accompaniment to food. So that's another reason why I like to use a wine glass, or a wine glass with sparkling. And in fact, in Champagne now, you will never see flutes anywhere these days. They're all using wine glasses. So it's an interesting departure in fashion, if you like. Giuseppe, so talk us through the Prosecco in terms of the flavor profile.
Yes, then I mean I will add also to what you were saying before, that having a wine glass instead of a flute, you can drink more because the wine glass contains more wine. That's also, that's also, you can have with flutes you need to refill all the time. But
and what Prosecco's 11%? Is it 11.5%?
Yes, I think usually it's this one is 11%. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not non-alcoholic, obviously, but it is lighter style of wine.
It's a lighter style of wine, and I see that now there are also some spices coming out. Some not really in the direction of pepper, more delicate, but the fruit is a bit more mature, a bit more strong than before. I think the aromas comes out really in a nicer way. And of course, now having a wine glass, we can talk about the wine, because as you mentioned before, if you have a flute, I mean, it's really difficult to perceive the aromas of the wine. But we are always in the direction of very delicate aroma. So it's a very gentle wine. It has a complexity, but it's not coming out very, very strongly. So it's a bit like the wine. It's a very all-round wine and easy to approach. Never the acidity is too high. Also, it's quite balanced. There is this sweetness, but is together with a lot of fruit. So it's I would say it's one of the probably key of success for the Prosecco is because it's a very easy wine to approach. You don't need to be a connoisseur to approach Prosecco.
So tell me, your Valentine's dinner on Monday evening, what would you serve with your Prosecco?
Probably some tartine, small goat cheese and some herbs, some small appetizer, still again delicate, like a creamy, fresh goat milk cheese, but not with a lot of flavor. Also some we call it stuzzichini, which is small appetizers with never too strong in taste. So you will never go, for example, with I don't know, a strong ham tartine, or with even with a pate or foie gras. This type of flavor, they are too strong.
Okay, thank you for that. David is asking, with rising temperatures and challenges to the winemaking process, drought, stress, etc., will there be higher altitude Proseccos? If so, would they ripen in a similar manner, or would they be more acidic? Would there be the right soil conditions?
Well, I noticed that general in the area, in the whole appellation, viticulture tends to move a little bit up, and then for sure the temperature is a bit lower. There is more excursion, there is more acidity, but there is always also the risk of frost when you go a little bit higher. So one has to be very careful, because really we are cultivating the vines in an area where the vineyards were planted for thousands of years, and therefore has already selected the areas. And it's true that the climate is changing, but then all of a sudden you have a very regular season comes back, and if you have the vines in the wrong place, you get strong frost or some other problem. So it's a very open theme. But for sure, for example, if the vineyards of Glera for producing Prosecco are planted in an area where there is more morning sun and less afternoon sun, less exposure to the south, are all small factors that influence the wine to have a bit more acidity and to be more crisp.
Thank you, Giuseppe. James is asking, and it's a related question. James is asking, have you found global warming / warmer climates impact your winemaking? And has it impacted different Prosecco vintages over the years?
Wow, that's a question that we can spend 1 little hour to to answer. And thank you. It's a very good question. I try to be.
We've got
short.
lots of technical questions tonight, Giuseppe. It makes me suspicious there's wine students or something in the audience.
Okay, but okay, the global warming, if you can call it like this, for sure has an impact on viticulture. So there are many operations during the growth of the vine from when the buds comes out to the maturation of the grapes. A lot of operation where we can be very careful not to overexpose the grapes and to protect them from strong sun, from burning, and from over ripening during the harvest. So we do some operation between maybe April and September in order to protect the grapes from the sun. And then we try sometimes to anticipate maturation, the picking of, in order to avoid to get too much of a jammy taste in the wines, especially in the red wines. And for the white wines, we anticipate the picking to keep some natural freshness in the wine and more crisp character. And that goes for all the wines in general, whites, reds, and rosé. So generally, we have been changing our viticulture, adapting to the climate in the last years.
Okay, thank you, Giuseppe. Peter's asking, apart from sweetness in wine?
Well,
lots of things.
that's first of all, there are certain grape varieties where you can have a sweetness without sugar, and that's due to the fact that the production is not too high. So when the grapes are harvested, the berries are really juicy with a lot of flavor, and there is a natural sweetness due to the maturation of the grapes. Then, of course, there is another way that it's adding sugar, because there is a minimum and maximum level of sugar in the wines, which is quite a wide range. But this is not really interesting. I mean, the best way is to work on the grapes and to find out the right picking moment where the grapes are not over mature and not under mature. It sounds easy, but it's not easy to really pick the grapes at the right time.
I suppose we're going to talk a bit more about sweetness in wine when it comes to talking about the Amarone, but you can leave the grapes on longer to get sweeter, shriveled, or you can harvest them and leave them to dry. All of that helps to sweeten a wine, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. Because then, yeah, we are going back to the subject maybe with the Amarone.
Okay. Italian caviar as a food match. That sounds very nice from Dermot. That's his suggestion. Then Stephanie's saying, how should a bottle of Prosecco be stored before opening? And how long can you keep it once it's opened?
Well, first of all, I think that in Ireland, maybe you don't have the climate that we have here. So the summers are maybe not so hot. I don't know that, because here you need definitely a refrigerated cellar, or you need a small bottle refrigerator. But I would say that a bottle of Prosecco that doesn't suffer from heat, I don't know, above 18-20 degrees for longer time, and then it can be old for 3 years, no problem, and horizontally, and probably in a normal cellar it can be kept. So there is also the fact that it's a delicate grape variety. The wine can oxidize, but I would say maybe that's a problem after 3 years, the risk.
And the second part of the question is how long can you keep it once it's open?
Oh, that's it depends if the bubbles are a criteria you want to keep really the bubbles, then you need a closure that keep the gas into the bottle. Depends if the bottle is almost full, I mean, can be kept for several days, no problem. If it's less than half bottle, then the evaporation of I don't know how to say that, but the will lose some bubbles, and of course the wine is changing. So I would say if it's 3/4 of a bottle, 2 or 3 days. If it's less than half bottle, it should be finished or in the next day.
Okay, thanks, Giuseppe. I would say in our house that, you know, it gets kept about 10 minutes after opening, and then it's gone usually. Everybody's.
Okay.
Is the Guerrieri grape typical to the region? And just tell us a bit about the Guerrieri grape, please.
Well, the Guerrieri grape is a grape that it's diffused in the northeast of Italy, and the only province where the Guerrieri grape is not growing and is not allowed to grow is the province of Verona. All the other provinces of Veneto you can grow Guerrieri, and you can also grow it in the province of Trieste, where is the village of Prosecco. So it's very much diffused in that area. There are different biotypes. So without entering into details, there are a different shape of the grapes, a bit longer, a bit looser, but they are very much similar. The skin is not very thick, and is a grape variety that is quite productive, because I think limit is 15 tons per hectare. If I don't get wrong, then there are
15 tons per hectare.
Yes.
That's not really very much, is it?
Well, it depends what you compare. If you compare to Amarone, I don't know,
Pinot Grigio.
Pinot Grigio, but let's say in the Valpolicella, the limit is 10 tons now since 2 or 3 years. In the Barolino was 10 tons as well. In Suave 13, and but it's very productive grape variety. So it doesn't like to be to produce too little, because otherwise then you get a Prosecco that is 14% and with a completely different character. And traditionally was cultivated on pergola on the hills, mixed with other trees. So was a very really cultivated as a wild tree with a lot of space. That's how traditionally was and still is in Treviso cultivated Guerrieri grape.
Okay. Well, shall we move on to the Pinot Grigio? I'm glad I'm not the person that has to decide who wins the bottle of Prosecco, because we've had some very good questions, to be honest. Okay, so we're moving on to Pinot Grigio now.
Yeah, so the Pinot Grigio, that's another varietal wine. That's we are moving now closer to Verona, because we are in the area eastern of Verona, and it's a very popular wine. I would say, generally speaking, in the English-speaking country, and I think the reason why is because it's an easy grape variety to identify, and probably here is in Verona is less diffused because there are so many other white wines. But the Pinot Grigio, the first thing now, I mean, I'm not in ideal conditions for talking about color, but I see that a lot of you have a very light or white light where you can see the color, and the color of Pinot Grigio has always this tendency to move from yellow to the copper, to have some note, yes, that will remember coppers, and that's why it's called Pinot Grigio, because it has this characteristic that it's a little bit darker, and that's due to the grape variety, because it's actually is a mutation from Pinot Noir, and it's a grape variety that gives a very characteristic wine. It's not very complex, but the aromas of the Pinot Grigio is very distinctive. So it's very easy to pick up to pick a Pinot. And
so would you talk us through what you can smell, what you can taste? I mean, you're making this wine, so for us to have the winemaker talk us through the flavors and aromas, Giuseppe, is a treat.
Yes, well, so probably you could talk better than me on the aromas of the wine, or there are a lot of people that probably knows, but for sure I can see I can describe it from inside or from how we taste it here. And the first thing that we always find is that there is this little touch of almond that comes on the nose, and again there is this there is a little bit of pear. There is this note of I think it's called quince in English. Is a kind of is like an apple, but it's harder. You can do a jelly out of it.
It's like it's a pear, is it? Quince.
It's and usually it's cooked, and then it produces this brown brick color jelly.
Jelly.
Very sweet, and
that you would have with cheese usually.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yes. And so it's and there is actually there is not very much of citrus aroma, so it's more on the fruity, mature fruit, and some spices. Also some when you have a fruit with a stone inside, there is some taste of the stones. If you know the taste of the stones of the peaches or the apricots, the little almond inside, it reminds very much to me this.
Okay, thank you.
This man.
Stephanie's asking what your favorite wine is, Giuseppe.
That's a another nice question. It's a tricky one because it depends what I'm eating, and but in general I prefer red wine, and especially in the winter, and I would say barrel aged mature old wines I like very much in this time of the year.
We had as a food match, I'm just thinking, with the Pinot Grigio, you sent over dim sum,
Yes.
spring rolls, or white fish, and I think all that sounds absolutely delicious. Actually,
Yes,
the idea of Asian food with a touch of spice in the wine would be nice.
Yes, this is also because we think that it's interesting to give some food matching that is not necessarily only regional, or using the wine where you have international food, because probably is easier, I imagine, to eat some good dim sum in Dublin or in Ireland than in Italy, because here we have such a strong regional kitchen that to have good ethnic restaurant you have to go to Milan. But and then also we got these inputs by our Asian friends that come visit us and say, oh, this is really good with this and this.
Interesting.
In that case, the dim sum or the spring rolls. And in our region, we have also, due to the lake, some freshwater fish. And the freshwater fish sometimes has this character that can be a little bit not muddy, but earthy, and that goes well with some trout fish, some perch fish, I think, some probably I wouldn't say the eel because that's too strong, but yes, with a freshwater fish. So is and then
sounds nice.
And then it's also wine that goes very well alone as a aperitif.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It's got a nice touch, tiny bit of texture to it, which just makes it be a delicious aperitif, really. Someone is asking, Maria is asking about the altitude and if it's important for the aromas on Pinot Grigio.
Yes, I will say that in general, the altitude is important for the aromas of wines. But in that sense, it's very interesting if you taste Pinot Grigio from the mountains region, from Alto Adige, or Pinot Grigio from Friuli, or Pinot Grigio from Veneto. Then there are also Pinot Grigio from Tuscany. I think that we are. It's very expressive. It's quite intense, but doesn't have the freshness that you have more in the mountain region. So it's really depending where the Pinot Grigio is planted. In Veneto, it's quite had a lot of fruit and spices, but not such a high acidity. And then I think on the western part of Veneto, where we are, the Pinot Grigio has more character than in the eastern part of Veneto, close to the ocean, close to Venice. But that's my experience. In general, the acidity is never too high in the Pinot Grigio. So I know that in our region, it is not really planted on the higher part of the hills. It prefers and like to be planted in warmer soils and maybe with some irrigation, because it's when the summer is very hot, it suffers a little bit, but express very well in this in the eastern part of Verona, where we are having the vines there.
Happy to move on to the Munis, Giuseppe?
Yes, perfect. Okay. So now we're moving to
the reds.
To the reds and to the region of Lake Garda. And we are actually in Badolino, around here, the village of Badolino and Cavaillon are the two main villages of the Badolino area where we have the vineyards. So they are overlooking the lake. The vineyards do not go all the way down to the lake because the lake is too humid, and therefore they start on the hills above the lake. So also in the past, the vineyards were never cultivated all the way down to the lake because for fungus and it's too humid for growing the vines. Plus there is too much water on the slope at the end of Monte Baldo, which is a mountain that is parallel to Lake Garda. It's above 2,000 meters long, and the foothill are where starts the Badolino appellation. Munus is a Latin name for gift. So there is a connection that has my mother's family with the Doge Loredan. And there is a coin reproduced on the label, which is called Osella. And Osella was something that was printed by every doge to give to a certain amount of people during his period of the king. He was kind of king of the Venetian Republic, where we are on the western border of the Venetian Republic. So there is a link with the Loredan family, which is the family of my mother, but also was a wine that is produced in the most western part of the Repubblica Veneta. So this is the story and the link with Venice. And then this Osella has been printed in the 1700s during this Doge period. But going back to the wine, Munus, it's a wine that I remember have been presenting in Ireland a few times, and the different vintages through the times, and has always had a special place for Christmas. I know for many families or people I met at the different wine tasting. And it's a wine that like all the wines, red wines produced in the Badolino area, they are more on the delicate side. Wine in Valpolicella, we really are more rich and intense. And then the blend of Corvina, Merlot, and Ancelotta is a blend of three very different grape varieties. But here, again, we were talking before about winemaking. We try to have a very respective winemaking and very gentle winemaking, not to extract too much tannin, too much richness. So really it's a profound wine, but still with a light character, and the sour cherry is really coming out with some peppery note. These are the typical aromas of the Corvina. The Ancelotta, it's very deep, has a kind of little wild aroma, wild herbs. It's a more rustic grape variety with a deeper color, again not very tannic, and with some aromas that remind the raspberry. The Merlot, probably the majority of you know as well, but in our region is performing well, and we pick it not too mature in order to have still some fruit, and not to move too much toward the leather character of this of the wine made with this grape variety. And the wine, it's aged for 12 months in up to 12 months in 2,500-liter oak barrels. And I mentioned the size because we use big oak barrel in order to the wine, and not to have the taste of the wood or of the toasted oak into the wine. So really, I think that the fruits are coming out strongly from this glass of wine, at least here in Bardolino, because then it's interesting to know that the wine is tasting different in different places, because it's always traveling. But I think this 2019, which has been bottled at the beginning of last year, so has almost 1 year in the bottle and shows very well at this time.
In Kildare, it's got a slightly savoury note on the nose, which is nice, and then it has very bright fruit on the palate. So I think you do get this. There's a slight sour cherry, kind of fleshy, plummy fruit as well, and then a hint of something slightly like thyme or something on the finish, which just keeps it very fresh. It's absolutely delicious, and we've suggested this with roast dishes, but I mean, again, that would actually be delicious with even just a simple pasta dish. It doesn't have to be anything too exotic with this dish, with this wine, I don't think. Giuseppe, Merlot is one of your favorite grape varieties, I know, and I know that you trained for some time in Bordeaux, didn't you? Is that why you grow Merlot, or is there more of a story to the Merlot in the estates?
Well, of course, being studying and working in Bordeaux gave me the opportunity of seeing the grape varieties that are more planted, but the love with Merlot is also connected to the soil and the climate that we have, and to what this grape variety can add or bring into a blend with the Corvina, the Corvinone, the Rondinella. And so it's really, we try to make all the choices with the grape varieties that are either local grape varieties since long time here, sometimes some newly introduced grape varieties in the area, but we try really to link it with the soil, to study the soil, to see the climate, and to see what can well perform in our land, in our soils. Always remembering that we are making blend wines, so we try to get different. It's a little bit like when you are a cook in the kitchen with different ingredients. You can really adjust with small touch the final result of the dish, and that's also because Merlot is maturing before the other grape varieties, so we don't have to pick everything at the same time. We can dilute a little bit the harvest. There are many reasons why it's an interesting grape variety in the area.
Interesting.
And, also,
it also gives nice acidity, doesn't it, Merlot?
Yes, it gets nice acidity. There we go back to what we were saying before, that should be harvested too late, because Merlot, if it is harvested too late, then goes very much in the direction of jammy taste, cooked plums, cooked fruit, and that's really something we try to avoid if possible.
Joe is asking to learn a bit more about the Ancelotta grape. If you could talk a bit more about that grape variety.
Yes, Ancelotta is a grape variety that it's more diffused in the region of Reggio Emilia, Modena, the southern part of Mantova, and it's a grape variety that it's very interesting because I think is more hybrid that is closer to the wild vines, so it's less a domestic vine, so it's very resistant to the fungus, to the different disease of the vine. It has small berries with a lot of color. It's quite rustic, so it doesn't get ruined or doesn't get touched by the heat or the very strong sun, and has always a very deep acidity. And then winemaking also is important because we don't want to extract too much tannin from this grape variety, but it's a grape variety that it's after the harvest and the end of fermentation is almost undrinkable because it's very sour, it's very savory, it's very intense and need a bit of time to get smoother. So it's working well in a blend, but alone it's very it's almost like ink. So it's very, but it's a very interesting grape variety in a blend because it brings something, it adds something to the blend that the other two grape varieties do not have.
A touch of as you say, the touch of wildness, a touch of savoury note, something a bit, which is important to balance all of the right fruit with something a touch more savoury, I imagine. Yes. Willie's asking if there's a reason why there's no crest on the Munas bottle. There's no family crest.
Oh, well, we can say that there are a lot of our labels that are a little bit different, but to be very sincere, I don't know. No, I know. I can explain. It's because this label we gave to the coin, the really I say is the most important image on the bottle, and then on the bottom is this red bonnet, which is the bonnet that was the crown of the Doge. So
of Venice.
Of Venice, and this is homage to my mother and her ancestor, and it was born like this, and we never changed it. So it's like we say poetic license, we say in Italy, because if you have someone that is looking at all the labels will exactly remark this, but the story is because it was a very different wine from the beginning.
Interesting. Before we keep going with some more questions, we have got a delicious food match here with the Prosecco, fig and ricotta salad with organic leaves, with bandon honey and roasted pine nuts. And with the Pinot Grigio, we had Union Hall smoked salmon patty on homemade brown bread. So that all sounds fab.
Wow.
It sounds nice, doesn't it?
Very nice match and
Giuseppe,
elaborate.
I know you've not had your dinner, Giuseppe, so you're probably at this stage. So that sounds amazing, I would imagine. Teresa and Eloise is asking, as a winemaker, do you experiment much with different winemaking methods and styles, or try to stay true to the wines typical for the region? The Munas is great.
Well, thanks for the Munas. I'm really glad you enjoyed. I would say that the first idea behind the winemaking at the vintage is to be able to interpret the character of the year, the climatic character of the year, and to get the maximum out of it. So it's quite traditional winemaking, but we always try new things. But then at the end, when it's the harvest, we have really to run. And at the beginning, we can try a few things, but it's quite repetitive to the winemaking, vintage after vintage. but we adjust to if the grapes are very mature, if they are under mature, if there is a lot of production, if there is the rain arriving. I mean, there are so many factors that can influence the daily choice in winemaking that one has really to try to get the best out of it, out of the vintage.
And I think with your reds in particular, you see that you have quite a sympathetic approach to the grapes and a reflection of the terroir, because to my mind, you're not all about oak and extraction and so on. You're trying to really have a delicate touch to allow the grapes and the vineyards to show. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yes, probably yes. I mean, what I agree with what you say. I think that the complexity of the soils and the different grape varieties, we try to let them express and without mental closure to any grape variety, but always to try to get the delicate and elegant part out of it. So.
Okay, thank you. Giuseppe, before we move on to talk about Amarone, which I know will take us some time, we've talked about climate change a lot, and you are farming sustainably in the vineyards, aren't you? You're moving more and more down a sustainable route in the vineyard management.
Yes, yes. We have to deal with the climate, because in the last years we had some frost. We have the hail that was quite hitting the vineyard. So we have some natural climatic challenge, but we are moving into a way of farming the vines with a lot of action, starting from the fertilizer, also using organic manure, not using fertilizer derived from petrol. We use mineral nutrients. Then we are moving away from herbicides little by little on the different estates. And then also with the spraying, we try to remain as much as possible with copper and sulfur. And there are a lot of things that can be done, but I think the most important thing is to have a good common sense, because the maximum level of all products that can be used in viticulture and also in the winemaking cellar is very high. But if one has in all the viticulture phases and all the winemaking phases a lot of care and attention, really winemaking and viticulture, the vines and the wine do not need much intervention. But still, for example, I mean, with the sulfites, I think that on a very small scale they are important, especially for certain grape varieties. There are certain rules in winemaking and viticulture that need to be respected in order not to produce vinegar or rotten grapes. So it's a matter of balance, but we are going in this
in that direction. And also, you built the new winery in Bardolino in 2011, and that's a completely solar powered winery, isn't it?
Yes, that's. I mean, we decided to take advantage of the global warming, because the sun is very, very strong in the summer, and we produce with the solar panel the energy that it's enough for our use in the more intense working months, which are between, of course, the winemaking, which is September, October, and still the sun is strong, and also during the warmest month of second part of May, June, July, August, first part of September, where we need to cool all the winery, and that we do with the energy produced by the solar panel. And
also you have your own well for water.
Yes.
You're self-sufficient for water. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for talking about that. Michael's asking about tours of the vineyard. I'll do my travel promotion now. So there is, if you go on to the Rizzardi website, you'll see explains which cellars that you can visit, what tours you can do, but you can also rent an apartment, which is right beside the water in Bardolino. And the website's got everything on it, hasn't it, Giuseppe, in terms of the apartments, in terms of the winery visits and so on. It's all there on the website. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful website.
Thank you. Yes, we try to put all the information on the website. So, of course, the information of the first of all of the wines and the beer, but then also we have 3 wine shops. 2 are seasonal in Valpolicella and in Cavaillon, and the one in Bardolino where we are now is open all year round. Then we have in the old winery in the village city center of Bardolino, we have several flats with a pool in a green area, and then we have the historical garden in Valpolicella. So all the information are on the website. Yeah. And they are all linked, yes.
Yeah, and the apartments are absolutely beautiful. So definitely worth a visit. Okay, Amarone, the king of wines. So this is a 3 cru Amarone.
Yes, this is a 3 cru Amarone, which is a wine that it's interesting because I think it's very. The 3 cru is a very approachable Amarone in the sense that being a blend of 3 different vineyards has a character which is not as the Calcarole and the Villa Rizzardi. They're very much defined because they come from one single vineyard with different soils, exposure, etc. And the 3 cru is a blend of 3 different vineyards. As I said, they are all based in Negrar in Valpolicella. Negrar is one of the 5 villages of the classical area, so the heart of Amarone. And Amarone is not a grape variety, it's not a blend, it's a way of making a wine. So it's a wine that takes a very long process from the harvest to the bottling, because usually it's around 4 years at our winery. The grapes are picked in the first part of September, usually in small cases of maximum 5 kilo grapes per case on one lay, very with a lot of space. The cases have a lot of holes to make the air circulating, and then we bring all these cases of grapes into what we call frutaio, which is a drying room. In the drying room, the grapes will shrink, and the sum of the water of each berry is naturally evaporating during the
period. Shall I show my grapes, Giuseppe?
Ah, yes.
So we've got some dried grapes here, actually, just by pure chance. So that's how they end up. So they start fresh and they end up dried out and still juice in them, though.
Yes, and that's great, because we don't have any anymore, because we crushed them for the vintage 2021, everything between the end of November and December, because it was a quite short drying process. And then when the grapes goes in these drying rooms, they remain there 2 to 4 months, and then everything is very regulated, because the appellation tell us when we can start to crush the grapes. But what's happening every berry with this evaporation of the water is that there is a concentration of sugar, of the acidity, of the polyphenols. So the juice that is made out of this grape when we crush them in December, November, January, is very rich sugar, very concentrated, and this is really why Amarone is so different from any other wine, due to this drying process. And then when we start the fermentation is done with some yeasts that are able to perform in a very rich in sugar context, and they are not able to transform all the sugar in alcohol. This is why Amarone has always this little sweetness, touch of sweetness at the end, which after 3 years of barrel aging, which is the case for this Cru, goes a little bit away, but remains always this character of sweetness, which is part due to the sugar of the wine and part due to this process of drying the grapes. And the 2016, in my opinion, is one of the best of the last 10 years at least. Has a very long potential of aging. It's very nice now, but it will evolve in a very interesting way in the next few years. And one characteristic of the Amarone of 16 is that we find there is a lot of ribes character. Ribes is I don't know if it is a blueberry or one of these small, very dark blue berries. And I tasted.
Someone will look that up and find out what it is.
Yes.
I don't know what it is.
Mirtillo, it's called.
Oh, myrtle. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Interesting.
And
so,
sorry.
The food match for Amarone, we were saying, was a casserole with an Amarone sauce or like a mature pecorino cheese. If you were in Verona, risotto, an Amarone risotto would be quite common, wouldn't it, as a dish? But
yes.
Go on.
I think that, of course, here we have a lot of, then we have also some dishes made with horse meat, because it's very traditional in the region. I know it's not very popular.
Cover my ears.
But because it has this sweet and note, and it's also very good for some game, like pheasants or hare or beef stroganoff. You mentioned some cheese, but it also goes very well with some sweet curry. So curry, not spices, not picante, but because it has this character and goes well with several dishes of the Indian food. And there again, we got some inputs from our Asian and Southeast Asian friends that were thinking that this wine goes with some of the food rich in sweet spices because of his character. And in the region, of course, we use it with some cheese like old Parmesan, old Pecorino, but not too strong cheese in order to respect the wine. And when Amarone gets old, it's a wine that you can drink by itself at the end of the night.
I think as well, the idea of the touch of sweetness with the saltiness of something like, a Parmigiano or Pecorino would be nice. I think that could work lovely, really deliciously. Giuseppe, so still Valentine's, Monday night, 14th of February, and you're obviously very close to Verona, the home of Romeo and Juliet. So what would you pair this with for the romantic Valentine's meal on Monday night?
Well, if it is a meal with meat, of course, in this season.
Not horse. Don't say horse.
No. I was thinking that goose and duck are two very good match, and it's a good season for this type of meat. And then of course, in case of vegetarian or a different type of food, like a green curry or really dishes like this. But I think that with meat, also red meat, it's really a nice cold season. So it's a good opportunity to have an Amarone, and why not to have an entire meal on Amarone, starting to have a glass, and have maybe an appetizer which is different than what we were saying before with Prosecco, with cream cheese, more like, a pâté or terrine, or even small snacks with some smoked meat, but even, for example, smoked herrings on small appetizer could be a match. So smoked fish can be also a match with Amarone. So it's very.
That sounds delicious, actually. And someone's asking about the aging potential of Amarone, and you've already mentioned that with older Amarones, you should just drink it at the end of the meal, meditate over a small glass of mature Amarone. So what do you think? Age, it depends on the vintage, obviously, but just a general chat about aging potentials of Amarone.
Well, I would say that for sure, 10 to 20 years easily. Talking about a good vintage, and it's very interesting to see the evolution, because from the vintage to the bottling is 4 years, and then I think another 2-3 years needs to settle in the bottle well.
Okay.
And then it starts to evolve, because at the beginning it's quite tannic. After that, become more smooth, and after maybe 15 years from the vintage, it gets very much into a chocolate character that can remind a little bit of port wine, but not really like port wine, but it's very smooth with these cacao notes, or very like a cherry liqueur notes that takes over. And yeah, that's really has an interesting evolution. If one has a case of Amarone at home and open a bottle every second year, really, it's a long journey, because in terms of taste and aromatics, it evolves a lot with the time in the bottle.
Bridget is saying that she's had it with Maline's cheese from Cork with the Amarone, and that's worked really nicely. So I'm happy to see any other matches there that we've had with the Amarone. So Giuseppe, in terms of the future then, I mean, I know that new grape varieties are being signed off to be planted in different parts of the world and so on. Do you think that you'll be sticking completely with traditional varieties, or are you experimenting with anything?
Well, we have a project that is going on since a couple of years with the local university, where they tried to, we gave them a piece of land, and we cultivate some crossing between Corvina and other small grape varieties, red and white, to see if we can improve the resistance to Esca, which is really a calamity for Corvina, is the fungus. So we are working a little bit on the local grape varieties to see if we can improve crossing it with some other grapes and sticking in the same aromatic area. So that's and then we are always a little bit experimenting, but I will say that we are trying to know better what we have, and we have already so many grape varieties that but there is always something new coming out, and it's interesting to see that grape varieties that were performing well in different climate, with the climate changing, they maybe are adapted to our region, and the other way around, that some grapes that were only growing here, they maybe we move also to some other region. So it's very it's a very fluent process. It's moving.
You said Esca, that's a trunk disease.
Resistant to. That's.
Esca's a trunk disease.
I don't understand the word trunk. Sorry.
Of the.
Yes, exactly. Yes. The wood. Yes.
The wood.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are grapes ever dried during the production of white wine? So there's a good opportunity to talk about Soave.
Yes, we produce a white wine that is called Recioto di Soave, and it's produced with grapes that are variety Garganega. It's dried the same way as Amarone, and then after the fermentation, at a certain point, we stop the fermentation, keeping the wine sweet. So it's really a dessert / cheese wine that is called the Recioto di Soave. It's made with white grapes, and it's sweeter than Amarone. But yes, that's what we produce in the region with white grapes, appassite, with appassimento.
Thank you, Giuseppe. And actually, we don't sell that wine because you make tiny quantities of it, but we probably should buy some and bring it over to Ireland. So Teresa and Eloise are saying, with all the talk of climate change, has Giuseppe tried any Irish wines, and what is his outlook on the fledgling Irish wine industry, or should we stick to whiskey?
I think that I haven't tasted Irish wine, so I would be very interested and very curious. And I don't think, well, it's a matter of climate, because I think that with the global warming, I've been tasting some interesting wine, for example, in Denmark, because I know there are several winemakers. I met a couple of them, and they are cultivating grapes that are originally from Germany, very well resistant to the cold climate. And they told me they are more pleased with white grapes than red grapes. But I think there are very interesting sparkling wines, for example. So why not Ireland? I mean, must be more or less at the same latitude. And I can't answer to the question, but I can only say that I'm very curious. Next time I come to Ireland, I will keep it in mind and try to look for tasting some Irish wine.
And Giuseppe, then, just another question back to the Amarone. There's been a change in legislation on Amarone in terms of, there used to be quite a lot of cheap Amarones available. Well, we didn't really have any, to be honest, but that's changing, isn't it? Because there's been a change to Ripassos in terms of the Amarone percentages in Ripasso.
Yes, well, first of all, in the last years, also with Amarone, I mean, after the harvest, you have a control entity coming and counting all the cases, checking the quality, checking the weight, and then they give you kind of green light if the grapes are in order with all these characteristics. So it's very controlled. But apart of this, since vintage 2019, we are obliged to add to the Ripasso a minimum quantity of 10% of Amarone, which is in a blend of a wine like Ripasso is huge. So it really has, I would say, boosted maybe a little bit the Ripasso wine, the sales, and also the depth of the wine. I wouldn't say the concentration, but the depth, and really has helped the Ripasso to be a more serious wine. We are using really the minimum required quantity of Amarone, because we don't want to go too much. We don't want to go in a direction of Amarone Ripasso. We want to still produce a Valpolicella Ripasso. So to keep a lot of fruit. But in general, in the area, the addition of Amarone to every Ripasso has increased the quality and the depth of the Ripasso, and maybe the longevity as well.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for answering that. Willie is saying he has a bottle of the Muniz 2016, and would there be any difference in the taste between it and the one we're drinking tonight?
Oh yes, I would say yes, definitely, because tonight I think we're drinking the 19, so the 16 has 3 more years in the bottle. I would be curious to I haven't tasted the 16 for a while, so I don't know. Probably it will be close to the peak, but remain to be seen. The wine should be good, especially in Ireland with the cooler climate. So it hasn't been exposed to heat, excess of heat.
Okay, thank you. So we have a happy birthday to James, a happy 70th birthday to Eamon, and a happy 50th birthday to Manus. So that's nice. 3 birthdays on the one night. That sounds good. And then I do announce now the winner of the Prosecco is James Lace, and his question was: have you found global warming stroke warmer climates impact your winemaking? Has it impacted the Prosecco vintages over the years? So that's James. Well done. He has won the bottle of Prosecco. I'm hoping it's the same James whose birthday it is today. Anyway, that would be nice, wouldn't it? But Yes, so listen, Giuseppe, thank you very much. All joking aside, are you doing anything nice on Valentine's night?
Excuse me?
All joking aside, are you having a nice meal on Valentine's night?
Well, I haven't planned because I go on Valentine's night. I will be with my wife and daughter for a couple of days on the mountain skiing because it's skiing
Oh,
holiday
nice. Perfect.
next week. So
Okay.
it will be, and they announced a lot of snow, so I'm sure we're gonna have some nice days. But I haven't yet organized. But for sure, will be a nice bottle of wine, and around this we'll try to build up a nice dinner.
That sounds nice. Bridget's asking, what would your death row wine be?
My
Death row. It's not very cheerful. Your desert island wine.
ooh. I haven't thought. I haven't really thought.
No.
Red, old, and possibly a Magnum.
Okay. Actually, Bridget said death row wine. So desert island, death row. I don't know. I think, but anyway, a Magnum red and
Merlot.
old. Merlot. Ah, you
Okay.
see, back to the Merlot. Okay. James said, thanks very much. It's been a fantastic evening. Thank you, Giuseppe and Lynne. Sadly, it's not his 70th. He's just turned 24. Oh, thank you for the question, James. Anyway, that's brilliant. Giuseppe, thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you. We hope that our wine festival will be back in November. And I know that if it is, you'll travel over for it. So people would get the chance to meet you there. We have another tasting going on sale shortly, which is a Gerard Bertrand tasting, which is in March. And yeah, I think that's all I've got to say. Sometimes I forget all the things that I've got to say, Giuseppe. So listen, it's been great having you. It's been absolutely lovely talking through the wines. Just a fantastic range of wines, styles, great varieties. And to be honest, there was only 4 wines tonight, but I know that you've got so many other wines. There's a Lagana, there's a Soave, there are Passos, but just really, really interesting. And really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Giuseppe. And thank you everyone for joining us.